Hey, it's SaskiaSketches and welcome back to On My Mind, the show where I talk to you about what's been on my mind this week. And today I really want to talk about Beasts of Prey. Beasts of Prey is a trilogy written by Ayana Gray, and it's honestly some of the best writing that I've read in a long time. And I just want to geek out about it. It's going to be a very rambly video. I've taken a couple of notes, but I am just oh my goodness. I finished reading the last book just a couple hours ago, and I'm just, oh, wow, so freaking amazing, and I just want to ramble about it. Yeah, so there will be spoilers because there's just a lot of stuff I want to talk about that I can't reasonably do without spoiling anything. So I highly recommend you go read the books if you haven't read them yet. I'm not going to spoil everything because go read the books. But again, there's like just some stuff that I can't reasonably talk about without keeping everything a secret. So go read it. It's amazing. Absolutely highly recommend. Yeah. I guess we're just gonna go into my notes because I will not be able to keep my head straight. Because there's just so much I want to talk about because it's so cool and I just want to talk about everything. Okay. Yeah. The setting. The whole thing is a fantasy story. And it is set in a fictional African country. And the whole series pulls from a lot of different places in Africa. So there's a lot of mythology and references, and it really feels like a celebration of a lot of different cultures. So it's a Pan-African story, and I'm actually gonna just read real quick. I have the books with me. What Ayana had to say about it, because I think that's important. Let's see. I refer to Beasts of Prey as a Pan-African fantasy because though it shows that it's not at all a real place, much of its influence and inspiration has been shaped by the very real continent of Africa. The decision not to focus on one region of Africa was a deliberate one. As a black American woman, the reality is that I will never know exactly, or even approximately, where my ancestors lived and thrived prior to their capture. So their story honors cultures, mythos, and folklore from across different regions of the continent. And the honestly, all the author's notes sections at the end of the books are very insightful and extremely interesting to read. And I just honestly want to know more about the thought process that went into these books and all the references and things. I just want to know more. So I wonder if there's any, if she has a website or anything that I can read more on, which would be great. And I might check out later, actually. Yeah. Also, just in general, is written really well. The style appeals to me a lot. It's the tension especially is done very well. There's multiple times where I was holding my breath and gasping for breath, or exclaiming in oh no, what's going to happen next? Oh no, or things like that with oh, or it's yeah, get him. Things like that. I don't usually do that when I'm reading, but I definitely had those kinds of reactions. And I feel like that speaks to how invested I was just reading. It was just extremely amazing. Just very well done. I also just like the pacing, especially because there is obviously a lot to describe in a fantasy story, and a lot of world building that you have to do. But I felt like it was all very well done, quite concise, even though there was a lot. I feel like it was built up very well, because in the first book you only get to know little snippets about the lore, and you're especially shown bits about the magic system. but just very surface level stuff. And then in the second book, there's a lot more explained and explored, like all the orders, because there's magic. It's called the Splendor, and it's like an energy, a cosmic energy, that certain people can draw on. They're like the magic users of the world, and they can use that energy to shape the world around them and do different things with them. But it is in the first book. It's not really explored like how or what extent. It's just like it's a very powerful resource. And then in the second book, it's explored a lot more, like what are the limitations and what are the practical uses of magic and things. And it's very, very interesting, and I like how it's done, because it doesn't feel overwhelming. It's not like all of this is dubbed on you all at once. It's really like told to you in a way that is digestible and easily understandable, which is a lot to say, because that usually is a very big thing to get over in fantasy worlds. Like, how do you, or fantasy stories in general, how do you convey to the audience how the magic system works without overwhelming them, right? Or like what the lore is about, and just how the world works, and how it's different from ours and things. And I feel like that was done extremely well in this one. So in the first book, we only just meet one of the gods, two technically at the very end. And then in the second book, there's another one introduced, and then in the fourth, in the third book, we get the other ones. So it's all very, very well paced, and in a way that is not overwhelming. And just the story in general is well done, well laid out, well paced. Felt the plot was very, very gripping, and there were definitely some things that like some plot points that came together conveniently, but and at the same time, I thought it was very satisfying as well. Like Amakoya's bracelet, for example, that one was very much a oh my gosh, yeah, you really did have to be at the right place at the right time, but it felt so satisfying that I didn't mind it so much. Because this was like a I don't want to say MacGuffin, but it was a just an object that the characters had to find, and it was just kind of handed to them in the end. But it was done in a way that I thought was relatively satisfying still. But yeah, there's these little things like that where I'm like, yeah, I don't know if I would have done it that way, but it's not my story, so I don't care, right? Like, this is still done in a very good way. It's just these things that I wasn't expecting, or things that I would have liked to see done a different way. But that's neither here or there. That's just personal preference. And I've got a little section at the end where I go into more detail on that. In my notes, let's see. Yeah, the mysteries were done extremely well. Plot twist was set up properly and caught me by surprise, but in a very satisfying way. Like I didn't see that coming until the very last second, but that makes so much sense. Yeah, I totally agree with that. Is it so? I don't know. Like there was a lot of there were a lot of plot twists, but they were done super well. I feel like that's in my own writing. I always feel like plot twists are very, very difficult to pull off well, because you have to manage the foreshadowing, and it feels like a tightrope, because you must foreshadow enough to where the plot twist doesn't come out of nowhere, but you also can't foreshadow too much to where the plot twist is you can just see it coming. But I felt like that was done extremely well, because there were a bunch of different plot twists where I was like, I knew like either something was gonna happen or I didn't see anything coming, and it was like it came together in like a moment of like revelation, and I was like, oh my gosh, it makes so much sense, or like that's so right, and why didn't I see this coming? Because that, whoa, like it really had this wow factor for me for a bunch of those plot twists. And it just slides and clicks together so neatly, in a way that really works. And sometimes the writer in me did see a couple things coming. Like there's a couple times where a plan, this is like a little writing rule, I guess, is if a plan is explained to the audience, to the reader, that plan is going to differ, or like something is going to go wrong from that explained plan. But if the plan is not explained, then it's going to go according to plan. So there were a couple times where that happened, where like I think the best one is where or the best example is when Coffee had made this like really big shield with the splendor, and kept everybody at bay, or like her friends helped as well, but she was the main contributor. And then way later, she's like, okay, I'm just gonna do that again. And I was like, oh no, she's not gonna be able to do it again, is she? And then she couldn't. So there were like little bits like that, but I don't think I would have that would have interfered with anything, or like with my experience, if I didn't know that trick. And at the same time, it didn't affect my experience of that scene. I guess maybe it even heightened my worry or like my anxiety whenever I did read, oh no, they have a whole plan laid out, it's probably gonna go wrong somehow. That definitely like got me worried a few times. But yeah, this book has had me on, like, these books have had me on the edge of my seat throughout most of them. I think the third one was definitely my favourite, because I really loved the way that everything was brought together into this really strong finale. All the setup was paying off, and I'm a sucker for that. I'm a sucker for that. Usually, like, the first book or the first part of any series is always my favourite, because I like things nice and simple. But in this one, the last part was my favourite. I just thought the conclusion was so well done. Just incredibly cool. Yeah, another thing of the another quirk, I guess, of these books is the switching perspectives, which is nice because that allows you to have multiple main characters. And another thing that it did for me is that it really kept me on the edge of my seat, because especially the second book, the two main characters were separated, and I was just like, oh my gosh, what's happening with this character? And then the chapter would end on a cliffhanger and then switch to the other character. And it's like, oh no, what happens? And so I keep reading, and then the chapter that I'm currently reading ends on a cliffhanger, and then we pick up right at the other cliffhanger, and then you just have that whole cycle, and it just keeps you reading like over throughout the whole book. Very gripping. Also, like, gets a little bit too like, I don't know, annoying is not the right word, but it's more like, it really keeps me reading in a way that's like, I want to know what happens. So that is a good thing, by the way. That's a good thing. But it really had me extra invested, I guess, because of that. Yeah, another part is the time and the chronology aspect of it, because the whole story is not written in chronological order, which is just, it's so well done. I love messing with chronology. I think it's very cool and it's interesting to do and write, especially when you're like setting things up. And I felt like the setup and the payoff were like extremely well done in all of these books. just very, very cool. And especially with these bits of the switching perspective combined with the chronology. So there's a typically in the books there's three perspectives that you follow. There is Coffee, there's Ekon, and then there is a third perspective. In the first book it was Adia, in the second book it was Binti, and in the last book it was Akande. And it's just really cool because by the first book it's not necessarily explained immediately that the third perspective takes place way in the past, but by the as you're like going through by the second book, it's clear whatever is happening in this third perspective is happening earlier in the timeline. And that was just utilized so well, because the thing about non-chronological writing is that it can really be used to heighten just an emotional experience, I guess, and is done particularly well in the third book, I think. I thought the second book probably had my favorite use of this, but it was done the best, I would say, in the third book, because what happens is in the first chapter a character dies, and then as you keep reading it goes farther back into the past, and you get to know this character that dies, and you start dreading how much because you know this character's going to die, but you can't help but get attached, and then when it's finally revealed that, oh, they didn't just die instantly, they suffered for a week, they were dying for a week, ooh, that hurt, that like actually physically hurt to read, because you get to know this character over the course of the book, but you already know how they're going to die, when they're going to die, but you just get to know how deeply they care for other people in their life and everything. Oh, phew, wow. That was particularly well done, I'd say. Particularly well done. In the first book, it's more of a device for conveying information about the main plot twist, which I think is also really well done. And that made the end of the book exceptionally sad. And then in the second book, it was mostly character backstory, but it was also really, really well done. And it featured my favorite characters, so I'm gonna talk about that later. Why that was really cool. Yeah, I did also want to quickly apologize for any pronunciation errors, because I did look up how to pronounce names and things like that, but there's just unfortunately like criminally little to go on. So I'm trying my best, and if you know better, let me know, correct me in the comments and stuff, because I'm not an expert. Yeah, and there's I feel like I'm being so rambly, but so many thoughts, don't know how to organize them, just gonna spew them out. And you can listen, I guess, or you can just watch me draw. And we are here for that. If you want to have a more comprehensive review of this, you should just go read reviews online. I'm just rambling about this thing that I like, which is what this On My Mind show is all about, so it's fine. Who cares? Yeah, so there's a couple things I wish were explored a little bit more. I think especially the beasts, because originally I picked this book up because I was like, ooh, cool, mythological beasts, I like reading about mythological beasts, and then we start in this place called the Night Zoo, which is just a collection, I guess, of real animals and fantastical animals as well, and then we leave in a couple chapters and we don't come back until the very end of the third book. And I just kind of, that was a little bit of a surprise for me, because I was under the impression that we were going to spending the majority of the time with these animals in the zoo, but that didn't happen, which is not a bad thing. That's just my expectations, which turned out to be false. And there are, just throughout the series, there's a lot of beasts and animals that are explored and talked about, and I just wish that we got a little bit more of them, because just in the greater jungle alone, there is so many creatures that are like just extremely cool, and we get to see one glimpse of them to show up for a chapter, and then we never see them again. I would have loved more, but you know, I just, that makes this world feel so real to me. Like, I feel like I could read, there was a, let's see, is it called, what do I have this, there was like a just a guide that a scholar had written, that was just really just about the greater jungle and about all the creatures and stuff that lived in it. And I was like, I would like it, I would love it if there was just like a physical copy of that I could read, because I feel like there would be so much cool information about all of that, which was just so hype. Like, I would love to read more about just like all these creatures that we got to see. And in like the author's notes at the end, there's always a little bit of explanation about these creatures and where they come from, what their inspiration was. But it's just a paragraph per creature, and I was like, yeah, I want to read a whole book just about these creatures alone, because I feel like that would be really sick. But yeah, it just makes the whole world feel so alive and lived in, I guess, when there are so many like scary, honestly, creatures. I was like, yeah, I just want to know more about this. I wish they kept him on alive so he could have told us more. But yeah. Let's see, yeah, just the Greater Jungle and other locations as well. Like, there was so many cities and things that we came across that was like, oh man, I would love to know more about this city, where there would be, you know, just something mentioned about, oh yeah, this city was like completely destroyed once and this new city was just built right on top of it. It's like, yeah, oh, whoa, I want to know more about that. Why is this like just a line? I want to know more. Just about everything. I just want to know more about this really cool world. Yeah, and especially about the gods as well, because there was so we didn't get nearly enough information on them. I want more. I want it in book for every one of the gods, and just their complete backstory and things. I just want to know more. I want to know more. I want to know more about the mermaids, and I want to know more about Atuno and like everything. So much. Yeah. And another thing, I wish that some character deaths were explored more. And just, I don't know, reacted to a little bit more, because there were a few character deaths. There were minor characters that was like, when they happened, I was like, yeah, they're not dead. They're gonna come back later, huh? And then they just never did. And I think the reason I thought that, because there wasn't, either there wasn't enough time spent on them, or there was too much time spent on them, where it's like, yeah, okay, so this is a side character that we didn't really get to know all that much, so if we have like there's just a lot of emphasis, I guess, placed on their death and what it did with the rest of the group, this is probably setting up for either this character not really being dead, or this character coming back as like an untethered, and just setting up for a lot more emotional trauma. But neither of those things really happened. So I would have liked a little bit more acknowledgement, or a little bit, I don't know what I would have liked. But they just felt a little bit like some of them were gone too quickly, or just gone because the plot needed them to be gone. because there were too many characters, which I don't know. That's just one thing that fell a little bit flat for me sometimes, but I also felt like a couple of the deaths were done really, really well, so it definitely balances out. Yeah, let's see. Oh yeah, the prophecy. So, okay. I don't know if I probably should talk about the characters first, but I'm just gonna, like I said, I'm just gonna word vomit, because I so many thoughts. Yeah, so the prophecy. There is two brother characters, Ekon and Kamau, and they are, I love my tortured brothers. I love them. I write them every day. Like, so I always have a pair of brothers that are just having issues. But these two brothers are having particular issues, and their mother abandoned them because she received a prophecy about the brothers. Let me read the prophecy. It was east and west. One sun rises in the east, one sun rises in the west. One sun sees only triumph, and one sun sees only death. So this was a big plot point in the second book. And basically, Ekon, who's one of the main characters, is really concerned about what it means. And then he finally meets his mother, and she explains to him that this is not about two literal sons. This is about him and Kamau. This is one son was born early in the day, rising in the east, and one son was born late at night, rising in the west. And so one of them would be glorious, and the other one would have a tragic life. And she did say that in the end, one of my sons would grow up and kill that which he loves most, which can mean a lot of things. So she interpreted that as one of these sons of mine is going to kill me, so I better leave. So she left, which was kind of sad, not really a good idea, but she stuck with it. And this prophecy is a really big deal. Like, it's put up, like, especially after Ekon learns what it means, he's like really torn, like, oh my goodness, I'm gonna be the son who sees only death, and I'm gonna be killing somebody that I love. And he's really torn between two characters, Coffee and Sophia. He's like worried, okay, am I gonna kill one of them? I don't want to kill one of them. And then it's made a big point that Coffee asks him later, hey, if everything goes wrong, I want you to kill me, because I don't want Feidu, the god of death, to be able to use me for his evil plans. So that is like the setup, and then the writer in me goes, aha, I don't think that's true. I don't think okay, so I thought there were like two possible explanations as to where this could go. So I thought, okay, either Ekon is just like completely blindsided. He thinks it's going to be between Coffee or Sophia, but in actuality he's going to have to kill Kamau, which would suck. That would be terrible. But either that, or Ekon could have misinterpreted which son he was in the prophecy. Maybe he's not the son that sees only death. Maybe he's the son that sees only glory, and Kamau is going to have to kill that which he loves most, which would be Ekon. So, that would have also been very tragic. But in the end, nothing happens. Ekon doesn't kill anybody. Kamau doesn't kill anybody. And that felt like a big, open-ended thing. That I was like, yeah, okay, but this doesn't feel neatly wrapped up, because by the end of the book, everything is wrapped up very neatly and just done, finished. And I thought, okay, this, like, from a writer's perspective, this feels like a of like from a not a right from a plot perspective, this feels like a thread that's left hanging, that feels unsatisfying. However, a big theme of the book was also destiny and fate and faith and what you do with the choices that you have. And Ekon said, hey, I don't want to kill anybody, I don't want to follow this prophecy, so I'm not gonna. He put it in much more eloquent terms than I just did. But it was so it was a big theme was still making your own decisions, because there was a lot of talk of fate and predestined events, and like whether or not you should give in to that, or whether you are responsible for your own fate and things like that. A very interesting discussion and questions that I thought were addressed very nicely, and also in a way that doesn't provide all the answers. So I think actually that the prophecy being left open-ended like that was I don't know, because it's not like written in the author's notes, but I suspect that was done on purpose, to further emphasize that theme, which I do like, but I don't know, I would have liked to see that resolved in some way, but that's just because it was set up so much, and I don't know if this necessarily feels too satisfying for me, but that's just, again, just personal preference, because I'm more of a practical writer, I guess, in that sense, where I want to do setup and payoff really well, and I'm not sure if this is the payoff that I was looking for, or the payoff that I wanted, and that is just as a reader, very selfishly. I think as I'm experiencing this story, I think this is more fitting for this story specifically, to do it this way, because it really emphasizes the theme and puts more importance on the theme, which I think is a very important theme, and a very beautiful theme as well. It's just something, it felt a little bit left open, a little bit open-ended for me. So it's not necessarily a plot twist that I I'm a big fan of, but I can definitely see its merits as well. I would have just I don't know, for me personally, because I came to expect a little bit of that, was like, okay, yes, something tragic is being set up, for example, that character dying and then later getting to know the character and dreading them dying. I felt like it was gonna be something like that, and it wasn't. Maybe that's just me having to come to terms with my own expectations not being met, and that's fine. That's completely fine. It's not a missed opportunity or anything. It's just a deliberate choice that maybe I wouldn't have made, but a deliberate choice that works very well in the context of this story. That I just feel a little bit weird about, and that's fine, I think. Yeah, either that or I wrote something else, or Ekon seeing glory and Kamau seeing death instead, which is kind of true. But the big thing was killing someone, so yeah, you do still see Ekon and Kamau fit into this prophecy very well. Is that because Ekon did, in my opinion, he had a very glorious story, and he definitely turned into a hero, and at the same time Kamau really fell from grace, and killed a bunch of people, so he definitely saw death, I'll say that. I don't know, it's so Ekon of him to just immediately assume that he's gonna be the son that sees only death, because he's so insecure, this poor kid. But yeah, I don't know, just I like that because it does fit, but at the same time the just that there was like emphasis placed on, yeah, this specifically means that you're gonna kill that which you love most. I know it just feels a little bit open-ended in that way. But yeah, that's okay. I'm just honestly still hoping that maybe there's a fourth book that's gonna come out sometime. I don't know. I would love that, but you know, you never know. And at the end, it did say that this is this is the end of this story. It's the end of Ekon and the coffee story at the very least. But yeah. Then the titles of the book. Yeah. What does it mean? What does it mean? The beasts of prey, the beasts of ruin, and the beasts of war. Yeah, in the second book, the beasts of ruin. Let me see what I wrote. In the second book, the beasts of ruin were name dropped, which is true. There were some like as I've been saying, there's a bunch of creatures in these books, and in the end, I don't remember exactly where it said in the book, but these specific creatures were referred to as the beasts of ruin. Let me see. Let me read what is in the author's notes here. Yeah. Likewise, the Kongamotos mentioned in the book are inspired by a creature of less certain origins. They are referenced in the folklore of several African countries, including Angola, Zambia, and Congo. Notably, their names translates to breaker or destroyer of boats. They were truly beasts of ruin, and known for their legendary devastation. So they are like technically the beasts of ruin, but in the other books there are no beasts specifically mentioned as beasts of prey or like beasts of war. So my best guess is that these refer to the gods, because the gods do have patron animals that are important to their characters. And are important and vital, honestly, to Coffee finding them in the end as well. So I think, off the top of my head, there is a snake, a heron, a crocodile, a hippo, and there's two more. A jackal and a dove. And those are animals, those are beasts. Technically, you can stretch that to be beasts, I think. So, if we look at the gods and when they're introduced, I guess you could I don't know, it's a little bit hard because in the first book, we only see Badwa and then Fedu at the very end. And I would say a snake is a beast of prey, I would say, but a hippo not so much. I don't know, so that one is a bit stretchy. If you look at it from that perspective. But at the same time, if you take it a little bit less literally, beasts of prey as the gods, they are, when you look at their relation to the people it shows that, and just the way that the gods have treated the people, I would say it's a not necessarily like a predator-prey relation, but it's a very clear, like, oh yeah, these guys are like a tier above humanity, in the way that I would say a predator would be a tier above a prey animal, just in sense of like power and fear. They're very interesting themes, but it's not really an explanation that I can fit very nicely. I feel like if it was explained to me how it was intended, I would go, oh, that makes sense. But this is just what I'm making of it right now. This is the explanation that fits the most satisfyingly for me, even though it's not necessarily super satisfying. And then for the Beasts of Ruin, it's mostly Fedu that we see in this book, but also Amakoya. And those two, at least from what we've seen, are the most destructive of the gods. So I would certainly classify those as Beasts of Ruin. And then Beasts of War is when like most of the gods are introduced, and like definitely there is this like looming threat of war throughout all the books, but especially near the end, would say it's resumed and resolved when they finally clash. But you know, in the end, still isn't that much of a clash. But yeah, that is the most satisfying explanation I can come up with. But yeah, I don't know what else it could be. Because there's not necessarily like, I don't know. There's not really a satisfying or like an obvious explanation. At the same time, it sounds really cool. Beasts of Prey, Beasts of Ruin, Beasts of War. Definitely like a gripping and memorable title. So yeah, I just don't think it's the just the random beast that we see. Because I don't feel like they tie into the story enough to like warrant a place of the title. And maybe it's got a lot of layers and different meanings. Very interesting. Anyway, it feels fitting. I just don't really feel like I've grasped exactly how it fits. Yeah, what else? Oh yeah. The awkward romance got a couple eye rolls from me, but the characters are teenagers, so in that regard it makes sense and works. Plus it was awesome to see some casual lesbian representation. Yeah, that was awesome. I wasn't expecting it. I definitely got a bit of lesbian vibes or like queer vibes from McKenna and Jiri. But they were great. I love those characters. I love all the characters, honestly. They were like really well done. I'm gonna geek about them later, but it was really nice to just have some just very casual representation, because the word lesbian wasn't even dropped. It was just two girls who got into a relationship, and it was just mentioned, and then way later they said "I love you" and that was it. But in a very nice casual way, like not in a oh this is quickly brushed off kind of way, but in a oh yeah, this is like really acknowledged, this is part of them and of their character and who they are. But it's also not a big deal, right? Like, we are saving the world right here. It doesn't matter like who you're into. And I like that a lot. I'm a big fan of that kind of casual representation, because we don't, I think like big coming out scenes are important in the right context, when it feels important for the character, and at the same time I feel like more casual representation is also very important. So two sides of a really nice coin. Yeah. Let's see what else. Emotional maturity, panic attacks, OCD representation. I love that the emotions tie into the magic system so much. Yeah, so I wasn't prepared for how emotionally mature this story was. Like, I don't know if like Ayana Gray has been to therapy, but it feels like there's just a lot of different like techniques that are explained about how to handle emotions and how to like remain in touch with yourself and why that's important, and all of like a bunch of that stuff that I have personally learned in therapy. I was recognizing in these books, and that's not something that I come across very often. And I felt like there was some really important and beautiful moments where like a coffee especially really had to get more in touch with her own emotions in order to channel the splendor in a less destructive way, or in a way that felt better, or more safe, or in a more powerful way. Like, it was very interesting to see emotional well-being so closely connected with the effectiveness of magic, because that's something that I write a lot about. And I really, really like that. It's just a very specific thing about, something as, I don't know, as beautiful as magic, and as intrinsic as magic, I guess, in a person's being, because when you are using magic, it really is a big part of yourself, that your emotional state has a lot of impact on it. I love it when, like, a character who has a lot of power like gets really angry, and then their power becomes greater. Or even better is then they get really angry and don't get any access to their power anymore. Like, it's very interesting. And the just the focus and control was a big part of using magic with Splendor. And just like knowing yourself and knowing what you want, and staying in touch with who you are and what your goals are, that was very, very important. Because if Coffee, in moments where she wasn't able to like really remember who she was as she was channeling the Splendor, there were times where she like almost killed a couple people because she got so caught up in it and so carried away. And I thought that made the Splendor as an entity almost feel so real too, where like, yeah, there's this just power energy that you are taking into your body and releasing into the world, into a form, in like a form of enchantment or channeling or whatever. If you let this take you over, you're gonna do things that you are not like choosing to do necessarily, or you don't want to choose to do, and you're gonna get people hurt, and it made it feel so real and so dangerous too. It was a very natural kind of power limitation, I guess. Like, if you look at just from a writer's or like world building perspective, you always want to cap power, and I felt like this was done very naturally through the emotional maturity aspect of it, and also through the through just the Splendor as it was not like necessarily like a sentient entity, but it's definitely an entity apart from the characters themselves. And if you, as a magic user, aren't channeling it properly, it can take you over. So those were like really, really interesting ways of capping this power. And I honestly am a huge fan of it, of how it was done. Very, very interesting and very natural way of doing it. It's not like Kryptonite, right? It serves the same purpose in terms of story, but it's done so much more eloquently. And the panic attacks and the OCD representation were like super nice. Like, I was reading the first book, I was like, wait, does Ekon have OCD? And I was like, oh my gosh, he totally does. And then as I kept reading, I was like, oh yeah, he definitely has OCD. And as somebody with OCD, it was very, very nice to actually see a representation of OCD that isn't super destructive. Like, yeah, Ekon is definitely held back by his OCD, and there are moments where it's definitely bothering him. But it's more shown as a I don't know, yeah, it's definitely also shown as a response to his trauma, because Ekon counts, and his counting, he started doing it as he was running away from his dad who was dying, which was his main trauma. So the counting stuck with him, but the counting is it's definitely a compulsion, but it's not framed as something that he needs to stop doing or something that he struggles with doing. And I love how the people around him who like him and love him accept that part of himself. Like, Ekon has this thing with threes, so everything he does or needs, counts, needs to be divisible by three, in order for it to feel comfortable for him. So instead of like taking a 5-minute break, Coffee will suggest a 6-minute break, which is just, oh, I love that. I just love how she knows this about him and just like helps him with it, and like helps him feel comfortable, and like so he can really lean into what helps him feel safe. And yeah, like of course compulsions shouldn't get out of control, because if they do, it doesn't become a healthy coping mechanism, and compulsions do have the potential to become very destructive. But it was so nice to just have a character with OCD who doesn't need to change, who doesn't necessarily like bother people around him constantly with his OCD, because usually OCD, as it is shown in media, is like a big plague, and is something that is really keeping people captive and hurting other people and things. And I want to say, like, OCD definitely has a destructive quality. Like, if you let it get out of control, OCD can get really bad. But at the same time, it is mostly a way of thinking. And it's I don't know how to describe this properly, but it's a reaction to trauma and a perception of the world that is altered through trauma, and a reaction to feeling out of control and seeking control in other things, and I don't know, I felt like that aspect of OCD was like explored extremely well in this series, and not something that I get to see often, which is just hype, really cool. And I like that Ekon wasn't necessarily like cured of his OCD later, and even at the end of the book, he and Kamau were in prison, and Ekon was stressed, so he was tapping his fingers and counting, and Kamau kind of snapped at him, as like, can you stop that, because it's annoying me, and Ekon actually stood up for himself. He's like, no, because this is a part of me, and this is what makes me me, and it's important to me, and that's okay. And I was like, yeah, Ekon, you go, tell him. And then later, Kamau actually trying it for himself and also tapping and counting. Oh, that was honestly so sweet. But yeah, I just love the way that it's represented here, because it doesn't make me feel I don't know, it makes me feel seen and understood in a way, instead of like demonized, I guess. Because again, don't get me wrong, OCD can get really ugly, but so can panic attacks and PTSD and things, and I don't know, I like that it's allowed to be a part of Ekon, instead of either, oh no, Ekon is such a monster for having OCD, or oh no, Ekon is so sad for having OCD, or so it's so tragic. I guess it's not tragic, it's just how he learned to cope with the world as it is, and it's not bothering him, and it's not bothering other people. It's just an aspect of who he is, and I love that that is allowed to exist as it is. Very, very nice. Yeah, there's other things aside from the counting, right? Like Ekon also has a really, really hard time with changing plans and things, and he needs that structure, and rigidity almost in his daily life. He really, really cannot cope with things changing unexpectedly, or like spontaneous things he doesn't like, surprises and stuff. And like he needs the world to be predictable, and I just love how subtly that is incorporated too, because you would say like, oh yeah, a character that doesn't like spontaneous things happening, or a character that just doesn't like to be surprised, that's just a character trait, but when you put all these like subtle things together, you get an OCD character, right? Like or a character that has OCD, right? So it's it's just really well done. It's really well done, and I felt very it felt very nice to be like, oh yeah, I can like pick up on these things. And maybe the only reason I pick up on these things is because I have OCD, because I live with it. But it was very nice to just see how Ekon was written in that way, and almost like he's allowed to be who he is, and OCD is allowed to be a part of who he is, which is really nice to see. Really nice to see. Yeah, let's see what else. Yeah, there were a few times I was worried that the story would suffer under the classic misunderstanding trope, but thankfully that never actually happened. Especially when Coffee lost her memory, I was worried that everything would devolve into Romeo and Juliet, but thankfully the characters actually truly cared about each other and let that drive their decision making, which was fantastic to read. Yeah, I was... there were a couple times where I was like, ooh, is this argument going to be exploited for cheap plot development? But it wasn't. It wasn't. There was a moment where, in the last book, where Ekon and Coffee got into a fight, and Ekon ran away. But before Ekon could get back and say sorry, Kamau like drugged him and took him away. So I was like, oh no, it's like Coffee now gonna assume that Ekon left on his own accord and that he doesn't care, and then we're gonna have like this big emotional conflict. When, you know, in actuality Ekon means something different, and then it's just this big misunderstanding, because these always feel like such a waste of time, I guess, like in storytelling, where like if a conflict can be resolved by just a little bit of communication, like 5 minutes of communication could resolve this conflict, and it just wasn't resolved and it devolves into this huge mess. I don't like that very much. It is a way of writing that is very popular, but personally I just don't care for that much. But what actually happened is that, oh no, this wasn't like explored in that way. Actually what happened, somebody saw Ekon get taken, and then the rest of the characters went and told Coffee, and then Coffee made the decision, hey, let's go after him because this is important. I love him. I don't want him to like suffer, and he's important to me, so let's go and save him. Even though they just had a really big argument and they said some things that really, really hurt. They regretted it almost immediately, and they went to like go save each other, and that was so nice. I just love it when that happens, and it's done a couple times throughout the book, and it just made me feel so I don't know, like that these characters, their bonds are so strong. And like Coffee even thanks Ekon for a fight that they had where he called her out, and she's like, yeah, I needed to be called out because I was not like being reasonable. And I just love how human they feel, and at the same time how like again, this emotional maturity, right? This is how you resolve conflict, and these characters are like 16. Like they have bigger emotional maturity than a lot of people that I know who are much older. It's just hype, really well done, super cool, and like so nice, and like very refreshing, like a breath of fresh air. Very well done, and I love writing like that, and I'm gonna incorporate this more into my own writing too, where it's like, yeah, big fight, explosive fight, but we care about each other anyway, and we're gonna keep on going. Because usually these like fights are in storytelling are used to tear characters apart, and I definitely use fighting as a way to tear characters apart, but I just love, honestly, the idea of a big fight happening and it's strengthening characters and pulling them closer together, and I've really appreciated that from these books. Yeah. Oh yeah, I cried when Coffee reunited with her mother. That was honestly a really, really beautiful plot point. Because in the first like couple chapters of the first book, Coffee runs away from the night zoo and leaves her mother there. And just throughout the book, she's just so she really, really wants to get back and see her family again. And then when she does, finally at the end, there is a moment like she's standing right outside her mother's door and she knows her mother is inside, and she just hesitates because she's like, what am I going to say? And then she goes in, and she like is prepared to just say a bunch of things and like explain everything, and then her mother just like takes her face in her hands, and like they hug, and I cried, and oh, it was such a sweet moment. It was just, oh, well done, very well done. Yeah. What else? Yeah, my prediction for the ending was more tragic than what actually happened, which I'm very grateful for. Because as I was reading, it's like, oh no, it seems like a lot of stuff is being set up. Like Ekon's gonna kill Coffee, or like Kamal's gonna kill Ekon, or somebody's gonna kill our main character, and like, you know, Coffee's really suffering under all the splendor, and I just hope that, you know, she's gonna be okay, but I'm afraid, right? Because it's like being set up, and like we are thundering towards a tragic conclusion, and I am worried. And so what I predicted would happen is that Coffee would be turned into one of the lioness maidens, because she had been likened to a lioness a few times, and that Kamau would kill Ekon. And for a while I was even worried that everyone was gonna die. But thankfully that didn't happen. So like it's just, there was a lot of stuff set up where like especially like on the cover of the Beasts of War book, there's this big lioness with like glowing eyes, and I was like, oh yeah, that's totally Coffee, right? Because Coffee's been likened to a lioness. There's like a story that Fadu told where Coffee related to the lioness, or I think he actually even called her a lioness. And then there's this group of really, really big lionesses that were once people, that were turned into lionesses as an act of mercy from the gods. So it's like, oh yeah, that's totally gonna happen to Coffee. Like she's gonna become one of these lionesses, because either the splendor is gonna just mutilate her body, and she's just gonna have to be turned into a lioness in order to survive, or she's gonna die tragically, and then like come back as a lioness or whatever. But that didn't happen. So I think the lioness on the cover is probably just like a representation of Coffee, in that way, or is one of the lioness maidens. And I already talked about the prophecy. I was really worried about Kamau and Ekon, especially at the end, because that was resolved so well. Because Kamau is an extremely tragic character, who like is like beyond indoctrinated by like the religious leader, and he was drugged, and he was forced to kill people. Like it was really, really tragic, and he like completely lost sight of who he was, and what he found important and things. And then at the very end, he and Ekon were supposed to be sacrificed because they had sinned by running away and betraying the religious group. And I was like, oh no. I think what's gonna happen is they're gonna make Kamau kill Ekon, as like to give Kamau one final chance to redeem himself. He's gonna have to kill Ekon, which thankfully didn't happen, because that would have been terrible. So like I was like, okay, so either it's gonna be that, or Ekon is gonna have to mercy kill Kamau, because he's gonna get hurt or whatever. I'm glad it didn't happen, because I would have not been emotionally prepared for that. Yeah, and another thing was Themba reuniting with Coffee and then dying because of her eternal vow. Would have wrecked me, but we didn't get that either. Unfortunately, fortunately, not sure, but that's all right. Yeah, I agree, because I agree with what I wrote. Of course, I agree. So there was this plot point where Themba was is Coffee's grandmother, but she had sworn to Coffee's mother that she would not be in Coffee's life, and she'd made an eternal vow, which would have meant like if she broke it, she would die. So what I was expecting is for Temba to eventually reunite with Coffee and then just fall dead at her feet, after just a few words of, oh gosh, that would have been really tragic. But that didn't happen. Temba did still help a lot, like behind the scenes and stuff. She never actually got in contact with Coffee, which I also think is really sad. I don't know which one hurts worse. I did think she died very quickly, and like for her it did feel a little bit like, oh wait, we can't have Coffee and Temba reunite. She has to die, which just, I don't know, it felt a little bit unsatisfying, also because she chose to die, or like it felt like a very, I don't know, she kind of sacrificed herself for Ekon, and I'm just not quite sure, I don't know, anyway, that was just something that I was expecting and then it just didn't happen. But yeah, Akande's death did make me cry though. Ooh. Oh man, his story is so tragic. I don't want to like spoil too much, but he like accidentally killed his best friend, and his best friend like suffered for a week, and like really, really suffered because of him. And just because he like lost control of the splendor and then killed his best friend accidentally. And then he didn't use the splendor for decades, and then he finally decided to, and then he died, and ooh, it was very noble, and I was like, yeah, I mean, oh boy, like it's good for him because now he's like with the people he lost, and he like actually called out to one of the people he lost just before he died, and oh, it was so sad. Bittersweet. Let's put it like that. Oh, very good though. Very well done. Yeah, and then the characters. I've mentioned a couple, and I've already talked a little bit about them, and I'll just go through them one by one a little bit. Let's see if there's anything I still want to talk about. But yeah, Coffee is one of the main characters. I love her. She's great. She's so, I like, how strong-willed she is. She's like stubborn, and like a little bit unreasonable, very noble and very self-sacrificial. So definitely like main character energy. But she's so quirky too. Like she's very I don't know, like strong-willed. She's extremely strong, and headstrong, and just very fun to read about. Like, she is also a little bit impulsive, and just she's very emotional. She like she's got extreme emotional depth to her. Very cool and very well done. And I loved reading about her because she just feels so deeply, and she's also just not quite sure how to deal with her emotions. So there's times where she's like, okay, I can't cry right now, I just have to push through it, and she does, and it always has negative effects on her, and she just like her learning throughout the story to manage her emotions more, and like her emotional experience interfering with how she can use the splendor, like, oh, it's so well done and like so beautifully balanced, and like so subtle in a way, and at the same time so at the forefront. It's just like, oh, very well done and very cool to read about. She's spirited. I think that's the best way to put it. She's spirited. very, very nice character. And, you know, of course she's 16 too. She's a teenager. She's a little bit of a brat, but we love her. We love her. I think she's 16. But she does act like a teenager. In like a very, very, you know, a little bit of a frustrating way when you're reading, because you're like, oh, just do this, or just like admit you're wrong, or like whatever. But then you realize, yeah, she's a kid. She's 16. Of course, she's gonna be unreasonable, right? So it's like very well done, very well done. She's a good chosen one. Yeah, and then Ekon. Ekon is the other character, the other main character that I did already talk about him a little bit, his OCD and stuff. Like, he's the complete opposite of Coffee. He's like, he's a planner. Like, he needs everything to make sense and to be planned out, and he just wants everything to be predictable, to make perfect sense, and to go according to plan and everything. And he's very how do you say, he waits a little bit too long, maybe. Like, he wants his decisions to be perfect, and he gets frozen in fear, and he doesn't, like, sometimes he doesn't act when he should, and he second guesses himself. He's extremely insecure, but like in a very genuine way, like not in a way where you are rolling your eyes when you're reading, just like in a way where you're clutching your heart and you're like, oh no, Ekon, you poor thing, right? Also very relatable for me, who has very, very, like, terribly insecure, but you know, it's like, it's really, really well written. Like, I relate to Ekon a lot, just in his emotional state, I guess. He also has like a little bit of anger management issues, which are also like explored very well. Yeah, and again, like, his relationship with Kamau, extremely heartbreaking, honestly, because their father died and their mother left, and they grew up in this religious cult, and they were both like really influenced by it, but then Ekon broke free from it, and then Kamau was still like really drawn in by it, and it's extremely tragic, and they clashed a lot, and it was really sad. It was really sad, and I was just very glad that they got a happy ending, because, oh boy, do they deserve it. Do they deserve it. Very much. Yeah, and then Adia was one of the main characters of the first book. She didn't get to interact with many people because she was the character that was stuck in the past. But she was a lot like Coffee. She was very headstrong, and extremely powerful with the splendor and things, and it was really just very tragic to see how she was taken advantage of by Feiju, and like how she got to where she was, and I'm not going to spoil the biggest plot twist of the first book, but man, poor Adia. Like, justice for Adia, dude. Yeah. And then Coffee's mother Binti and Coffee's grandmother Themba. I did already like talk a little bit about them, but they were the subject of the portion that was set in the past of the second book, and that was, wow, that was extremely well done. So throughout the books, the magic users are discriminated against, and they are like a second-class citizen, and they are getting their rights taken away, and they're being murdered, and just beaten for being who they are. They are feared, and there's propaganda spread about them and things. Very tragic. But as you read through the section of the past in the Beasts of Ruin, you really get to see how that developed where they started and what happened. And Binti is not a magic user, but her mother is. So, like, it skipped a generation. So, Themba was a magic user, Binti was not, and then Coffee was. And it was just, it's so tragic to see the effect of such discrimination, and or like to see it put into writing, I guess, like, and it felt like it mirrored real world discrimination very well, sadly. So it hit very close to home. And it just felt extremely well done and very, very sad. And at the same time, to see how this discrimination, like, really, and the propaganda especially, how it, like, drove such a huge wedge between the two groups of the non-magic users and the magic users. I just really upsetting, and, like, extremely well done, well written and well portrayed in the most tragic way possible, in a very, very real experience, I guess, and especially the violence from the what would you even call them, the warriors, or like the officers, the people in charge, I guess, like the like police equivalent, I guess. They are, like, just they're called the Sons of the Sigs, and they are the religious. They are from the religious group, and they are the endorsers, or the enforcers of the law. And they are, like, extremely corrupt, and they use their powers and their influence for extreme evil. And you know, it's not the real life equivalent is not lost on me. And it's I don't know, it's tragic, and I think what makes it extra tragic is how real it feels, right? Like how the real life parallels, the real life aspect of it is what's the most tragic about it is how in this world of fantasy it feels so grounded, and so realistic, even, you know, if it's a dispute over magic, the people who are suffering under it are very real, and the effect of that suffering is like extremely well portrayed in Themba, because she suffers a lot, and she does a lot of morally questionable things to survive, and to keep her child alive, because she's got a little Binti to take care of, and Binti grows up to really resent her mother for giving her such a disadvantaged position in society, and that's just so sad. It's really sad. But yeah, no, Themba definitely, like, makes mistakes and does arrogant things, and uses her abilities for evil, and for bad things, and at the same time it's, like, so understandable. Like, I, like, can totally see where she's coming from, and it's so well done. And I don't want to say too much, because you should absolutely just read this. Just, even if you don't care about the whole story, just read Beasts of Ruin just for that, because it's so well done. Oof. Yeah, and she's my favorite character, in case you couldn't tell. Yeah, and then there's a couple side characters, McKenna, Zane, Jiri, and Sophia. They are fantastic. I love them. They don't have so much, like, they do exist in the story. Like, they have a lot of presence, and they they definitely get backstory, and their emotional experiences are definitely explored. But they do get a lot less than Coffee and Econ and stuff. Um, I really like McKenna because she sews. That's her thing. She can use the splendor to uh, create, and her particular craft is sewing. As somebody who sews, that's really cool to see because I don't get to read about people who sew very often. So that's really cool. Um, and she's a ray of sunshine. I love McKenna. She's so positive despite everything, and but not in a like uh, obnoxious way, just in a very real and genuine way where like, yeah, she acknowledges that the situation is dire and that it's difficult and scary, but um, she really feels like the glue that's keeping the group alive. Uh, and that's good. We love McKenna. She's great. Um, Zane, I'm not quite sure how to feel about Zane. He's a bit like he's the prankster. He's the clown of the group. Um, and near the end, he was really acting like a toddler. Um, and you kind of lost him a little bit. Or like, I don't know, his like he lost me a little bit in that way. Like, yeah, okay, Zane. It's like I don't know. Um, in like the second book, he was a lot more. He was also like kind of playful and things, but he was more like trying to impress Coffee. I guess is what I was the vibe that I was getting. Yeah, he's being like playful and daring and risky, just because he likes her and he wants to impress her, right? Um, and then later he was just kind of, I don't know, not necessarily like causing problems, but he was just whining a lot. Um, and like I was like, come on, like how old are you? Like 17, right? Like you're not 6. Which is all that's not toddler age. And anyway, he was acting like a 4-year-old. Um, but yeah, that's okay. I liked him a lot. He was funny. Just at the end he got a little bit annoying. Um, and then he died, which sucked. um, I don't know. I don't know. I liked him better in the second book, I think. Because he felt a little bit more mature, just a little bit more mature. Um, but you know, I will say he was definitely funny. Like his lines were always funny. Just near the end, especially, there were a lot more moments where I was like, "Oh, come on, Zane," right? But that's fine. We love Zane. He's great. And then Jerry, we didn't get to see so much. Um, like even less. Like McKenna and Zane were more at the forefront. Um, but she and McKenna being a thing was really cool, and we like them. We ship it. Um, yeah, so she's like a fighter, and she was I don't know. I feel like I just didn't get enough of her. Like there was not enough information. She didn't get to speak enough. But you know, I completely understand having to make choices on which character you explore, um, and which you don't, because there are a lot of characters. Um, but I feel like I would be more attached to Nigiri if there was more, like if we got to spend more time with her, if we got to learn more about her. I just liked her interactions with McKenna a lot. Yeah, Sophia's great. I love Sophia. She is a very graceful character. Um, just in the way that she's described. She's extremely confident too. Uh, very funny as well. And like I don't know, I like her a lot. It's a little bit hard to put into words, but she feels, it's just the way that Ekon describes her. She feels very, almost out of reach in that way, where like, yeah, she's way too cool for him, I guess. And at the same time, he feels extremely drawn to her. Um, and you know, whenever we see her from Coffee's perspective much later, I'm like, oh yeah, she's just a girl. Like she's just trying her best as well. Um, to make it through this crazy adventure, I guess. um, and I was worried there was going to just be more conflict between Coffee and Sophia over Ekon, but there wasn't. And they like work together very nicely, and I like that about them a lot. I like that they got to trust each other as well. I'm very happy with how she was written, how their friendship was written as well, because they didn't really get to know each other very well, but I felt like they still like came to care for each other a lot, which is cool. Just Sophia is a very like independent character, I guess. Like she's almost like hard to grasp in that way. Like, how do you describe her? She's fiery. She's exciting and fun and spontaneous and brave, extremely brave. She's got a big mouth, and she knows what she wants, and she is gonna go for it. And she's a great ally. She's a really good friend. She's awesome. Yeah, I think like Arno, we didn't get too much time with her. She's Ekon and Kamau's mother. But I also liked her a lot. She's very stoic, and then in hindsight you can tell, oh yeah, she's probably being so stoic because she knows like Ekon is her kid. And I just wonder if she like knew from the first moment she set eyes on him, or if she like figured that out later when she learned his name or whatever. Like, it's just interesting. And I liked her dynamic and relationship with Ekon a lot. Like, it felt very strained, and at the same time like they still loved each other a lot, and really wanted to repair the relationship. But it was still like really weird and difficult for them, which, you know, very cool. Yeah, and then lastly I've got the gods, because wow, they were like larger than life characters. I think Bartwa was probably my favorite. Amakoya really embodies the power. Feidu is legitimately terrifying. No wait, Atuna was my favorite. Itachi seems lovely, and honestly I really like how connected she is with the lionesses. She seems very gentle, like a breeze, and at the same time she feels like she could be as powerful as a hurricane. Extremely well done, and I want to know more. And Chembu we just didn't get to know at all, and I'm curious about him. So yeah, there's 6 gods. Bartwa probably got the most. Aside from Feidu, I feel like Bartwa and Feidu probably both of them got the most time, I guess, to be explored and to be interacted with. So we learned the most about them. I like Bartwa a lot because she really helped Coffee get to know herself and get to connect with herself and her emotions a lot. She was like a teacher kind of character. And then Feidu was like a terrible villain. Like, I hated him. He was like legitimately terrifying. Because he really felt like, yeah, this is a guy who can kill where and when he wishes with the snap of his fingers, and he just doesn't care about the hurt that he's causing. He just wants to make a world that he personally sees as good. Even if that means like a ton of people dying. Because he just doesn't care about human life, and that's really scary. And he just like really sees himself as above everybody else, and just like the confidence that he has, and then the power to back it up is really scary, like a scary combination. So he's like, there was like, I felt actual dread reading, and that's cool, because when you get like a villain like that, because I felt like probably Scar, honestly, from The Lion King, is another one that like if Scar was less light-hearted, if The Lion King was not for children, that's how I would describe Feidu. Yeah. oh, he's like terrifying. Um, and it's just, it's almost like hard to describe because he's like an actual like real villain. And he feels like larger than life, I guess, in that way because he is like a very powerful god. Um, and at the same time, he does feel very flawed. So it feels a lot like uh, like he does have a human kind of quality to him. Like if a human got like such terrible power, what would happen? Um, or like a corrupt human, I guess. Like he does feel like a flawed character, not like a perfect kind of god in that way. Just like a human, but extremely powerful. Um, and that's really scary. Because yeah, usually what I like in my stories is like a an evil um, that feels more human, I guess, in that way. Where it's like, yeah, it's not. I guess that was explored as well in the end of the story, where um, there was a lot of emphasis put on good and evil, and there not being anything black and white like that. It's more like everybody's good and everybody's evil, and everybody makes mistakes, and that's okay. That's what makes us human, right? Um, I like writing like that, where like, or like I like reading about characters like that, where there's not necessarily one character who's just like doing evil things. It's more like two characters really clashing because they disagree, um, or in that sort of direction. I find really big and larger than life, very very evil villains kind of difficult to be afraid of or difficult to like really sympathize with, um, or like I don't know, see the humanity in them. Um, I feel like that's really difficult to pull off, but I felt like Fedu really captured that very well. Like he was scary in a way that felt very realistic. Because usually when you have these like comical Disney villains, they are evil for being like the sake of being evil, or like Thanos even. But when you have something like Thanos, you're like, yeah, he really believes he's doing the right thing, but he really definitely isn't doing the right thing. And at the same time, he just seems so, I don't know, unrealistic, I guess. And Fedu, I feel like his motivations feel similar to like a character like Thanos. And at the same time, uh, like, I don't know, I felt like Fedu was very well explored in that way, where like, yeah, um, I can't see where he's coming from, like at all, but I can definitely see that he has power, and I can tell what the power has done to him, and like how his personality plays into his power, hungriness, and like how his personality and his power are a terrible combination, and like why he needs to be stopped. He was terrifying. He was really truly terrifying. Anyway, uh, yeah, and then Amakoya really felt like very scary as well. Um, in a sort of similar way, where she just did not care about like just smiting humans, right? Like she's like, oh yeah, you, I don't like you, die, right? Um, but she was less. She was still a little bit more like reasonable. Like there was a side of her that you could appeal to, but she felt very unforgiving, um, and like partial. Um, I'm trying to figure out what the right word is because she's just extremely powerful, um, and very much aware of her own power as well. I was like scared of her as well, um, but she does also have like this sense of justice, and loyalty. But yeah, it's just very, like, even hard to describe, just like an ocean, like a stormy ocean. Extremely powerful and terrifying and unforgiving. Like, she will pull you under without a second thought. And at the same time, she can be calm and beautiful as well. But at the same time, hold that power, and that extreme just potential for destruction. Yeah, very interesting character. And I don't know, she does feel like like a god in that way. Like, you can totally tell what kind of character she is and how powerful she is and what kind of life I guess she's led. Super interesting. And I really like Atuno. He felt much more like a character, or like a human, I guess, like an old, just like an old man living in his palace of books and like I don't know. I felt like he felt much more grounded and human in that way, and he was like also explored to be more connected to people, and then very distant because all the people he loved died. And here you could really tell how his immortality was weighing on him. And then at the end, he did show like a really extreme, just like a glimpse of his extreme power, because he must be extremely powerful. But I liked him because he was nice. And then Itachi, I already talked about, because we only got to see just a little bit of her, but the scene that she was in was just lovely. I just, she was great. I really like her, and I want to know more about her, because she's very connected with these lioness maidens, and she just, like I said, she feels very calm and gentle, like a breeze, because she's the goddess of the winds. And at the same time, she also like holds a lot of power. So I'm very curious about her personality. Aside from the little glimpse that we saw, and like what she finds important, and who she is, I guess. So I would read the whole book just about her. And then Chembu, we just didn't get to see. There was no, like, the characters didn't meet him. He was just kind of mentioned here and there. Just like, oh yeah, but we'll convince him, and then we'll see him at the end. And then near the end, he like smote somebody, and just kind of felt a little bit smug about it. And I can tell he's very powerful, and that's about it. But yeah, overall, like, if you couldn't tell, extremely strong character work. Like, I want to know more about every single character that we got to see and meet. Like, no matter if they were on, like, if they got like a paragraph, or if they got like a whole book dedicated to them, I just want to know more about them. Like, even more. I want to read so much more about these characters. Like, hey, I would read an individual book about everybody, honestly. And especially the gods, I want to know more about them. Like, just the mythology was done very well, and I just also, this is another thing, is the religious aspect of it, is because especially like the corrupt religious leaders, it really felt like a cult, and it was just, it's so well done. And then at the end, it was really funny. This religious leader like saw the actual gods that he claimed to worship, and he was like, oh my gosh, they're abominations, like, kill them. And those gods were like, bro, are you sure? Like, are you serious right now? But I love that, because it really, just from my own personal experience with Christianity, and the cult of especially American churches, and how I would imagine they would feel about Jesus, like, if he actually walked among us again, like, how would they feel about him? And I don't know, it felt very similar to that, in that way. And so I like how it was explored that the how people will use religion to place themselves ahead of others and to take advantage of others, like that. Ooh, that religious leader. Ooh, he was terrible. He was terrible. He was like ordering the deaths of people, and like very casually, like with the same kind of what even is the word for it? Like carelessness, and not even that. Just I just can't even wrap my head around it. It's so casual. Just like ordering people to die, and like drugging people and making them kill others, and just scary, terrifying. And like what power does to a person, and like how he just didn't even believe in the actual gods. He was like more obsessed with the money and with just exercising the power that he had. And I love how that mirrored real life as well. Just wow, just very well done. And as somebody who's been through like religious indoctrination, that was also it hit close to home in that way. Like I felt like it was very well described and well done, and it was really fun. I don't know about fun, kind of funny. It was satisfying, I guess, narratively satisfying, and just satisfying for me as a person to see that religious leader just be completely called out like that. Very well done. But yeah, extremely, extremely strong character work, especially like they were like, I don't know if I can't even say that the characters were my favorite part, because I love the world building as well, and like especially the splendor and how the splendor was explained and described and things. Like it felt very magical. Just insanely well done, extremely, extremely cool. And there's a reason I've been rambling for almost 2 hours. My goodness, oh my gosh. Genuinely, go read these books. They're great. Like, extremely great. And this is not like some video essay that is eloquently written and thought out and everything, but these are just my off-the-cuff thoughts after reading this that I just had to get out, because oh boy, how else am I gonna just like cope with this? Like, I just have this amazing story that I experienced, and I need to talk about it, so here I am talking about it, even if it is a stream of consciousness. But yeah, that's what On My Mind is about. This is a peek into my mind. This is what's been playing around in my mind, and I guess that's probably it for the day. And I will probably have more to say about Beasts of Prey and Beasts of Ruin and Beasts of War as I slowly process this incredible story. I will definitely be taking inspiration from this for my own writing. I can't wait to write character conflict like this too. And yeah, goodness, it just inspires me greatly. It was insanely cool to read, very, very well, just like constructed and well done as a work, and just extremely intriguing and beautiful, and just what a gorgeous world, amazing characters, just very well done, and I am just wow. I'm in awe, and these are like ascending into top however many of my favorite books ever. Like, they're that good. So go read them. They're fantastic. That's all. that's all I say after almost 2 hours of rambling. Anyway, I'm gonna go edit this video, and then I'll hopefully see you next week. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching this video all the way to the end, and if you enjoyed it, please leave a like and subscribe to this YouTube channel for more art videos almost every single Friday. Have a great weekend, guys, and keep on sketching. Bye!